A girl gets poisoned by her packed lunch and finds herself transported to an animated movie world, becoming a magical artist like Ma Liang. With a sweep of her hand, she draws a boss monster and rescues the main characters, changing the ending. Natsuko, a talented animation director making her debut as a film director, creates an instant hit. Her next film, an original romantic comedy, is also expected to be a major success. However, Natsuko hits a creative block when her storyboard sketches are torn up and discarded, resetting her progress to zero. Her boss, undeterred by her indifferent attitude and knowing her importance, brings her lunch. After dismissing her co-worker's original drawings with a demand for complete redraws, Natsuko decides to take over the drawing herself. Due to her high standards and distrust of colleagues, the film's progress stalls, risking the release schedule. Everyone believes the unstoppable Miss Natsuko will find a solution, but then she reads about an animation director who died from suspected food poisoning. In a complex mood, she takes an expired boxed lunch set aside, eats it while watching the deceased director's film, The Story of Doom, a dark and unsuccessful movie about heroes fighting a world-destroying villain. Natsuko appreciates the film and even considers actors for a live-action version. Suddenly, she also succumbs to food poisoning from the expired lunch. Before dying, she remembers the name of an actor, and after a flashback of her life, Natsuko wakes up in a desert. Soon, she encounters a monster from The Story of Doom. Unable to outrun it, she is saved just in time by Luke and his companions. Luke, a swordsman, fends off the monster, and Melanin, an elf girl, strikes it with 3 arrows, finished by Luke's decisive blow. Still confused, Natsuko realizes she has been transported into the movie The Story of Doom. Thinking they are merely cosplayers, she ignores the strange reality. Luke reminds her to follow the alarm rules for taking refuge, then rides away on Junior, transformed into a beautiful unicorn, leaving Natsuko behind. Walking back to the city alone, she arrives during the mayor's passionate speech, thanking Luke and his team for protecting the last town from monsters. Knowing every line of the fortune-teller's speech by heart, Natsuko confirms she is indeed in the world of The Story of Doom. Confronting Luke, the prophesied savior, she becomes disheartened, questioning why a talented director with social security and a proper job would reincarnate, typically a scenario for neets and homebodies. Speaking incomprehensibly, Junior tells her not to disturb their victory feast. However, Natsuko realizes a significant issue. If this is truly the movie's world, a monster army will soon attack the town after this cheerful scene. She warns Luke that the earlier monster was just a scout, and that a larger attack is imminent. No one believes her, attributing the lack of alerts to their robot monitor, which is unfortunately charging, and continues to charge during every critical moment. Junior was very displeased with Natsuko's disrespectful attitude towards Luke, telling her to go play elsewhere. When Natsuko grabbed and swung around Junior's horn in frustration, it only made Luke trust her less. Hungry and irritable, Natsuko criticized Luke for not being a true hero, as he wouldn't even help a starving girl, let alone save the world. Just after her outburst, she spotted the doom rice she had been craving while watching the movie. Before she could enjoy it, Luke took it away, and Natsuko, labeled a party-wrecking madwoman, was dragged away by soldiers. That evening, Luke, showing no sympathy, deliberately ate a large chicken leg in front of a pitiful-looking Natsuko. She never expected Luke to act like this, but remembered the upcoming plot where Junior sacrifices himself to protect Luke, leading to a darker turn in the story. Just then, a guard shouted, "The monsters are coming!" and their small robot finally reacted. Luke glanced at Natsuko instinctively, but there was no time for talk as they rushed out to fight. They faced a terrifyingly large number of monsters, overwhelming even the robot's sensors. Luke steadied himself and instructed Melanin to mount Junior and attack from the air to divert the enemy's attention from the streets, while he faced the onslaught alone. From atop the city wall, Natsuko watched the scene, reminiscent of her solo movie theater experience. Luke was almost slaying one monster with each strike, his holy sword shining brightly. However, the enemy numbers were overwhelming, and Luke was slightly injured. Although Melanin fired arrows from above, she couldn't stop their advance, and Luke was left fighting alone, a futile effort. As Natsuko recalled the painful scenes from the movie, she wished Luke would flee. At that moment, her pen, which could speak, urged her to start drawing. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, Luke and his team regrouped. Junior built them a protective fort and then charged alone towards the monster army, ready to use self-destructive magic. Luke and Melanin guessed his intentions and saw Natsuko running towards them, begging her to stop Junior. Unsure what to draw, Natsuko asked her magical pen for advice, but it told her to decide. Despite his fear and reluctance, Junior was preparing his final spell to save everyone. Hearing Luke's cries of agony, Natsuko focused on rewriting this tragic plot. Her pen burst into brilliant light, and suddenly, her workstation from the real world appeared in front of her. She furiously sketched the storyboard in just 42 seconds, and from the stack of drawings emerged a giant robot, starkly different from this world's art style. Following Natsuko's gestures, the robot fired beams from its eyes and mouth, annihilating the monster army and preventing Junior's self-destruction. Realizing he was facing a true game-changer, Luke approached Natsuko to ask who she was and where she came from. Exhausted, Natsuko simply said she came from reality and collapsed. Luke caught her as she fell, and Junior, also puzzled about her origin, returned to them. Luke then answered for the unconscious Natsuko. Miss Natsuko, 22 years old, an animator from reality. What is the story of the tale of descent to extinction? In this world, there are 9 countries, each with a shining soul future as bright as the sun. They could have lived happily and peacefully forever, but one day, a monster called the Void suddenly appeared and devoured the soul futures. If all 9 soul futures are consumed, a super void called the End World Void will emerge, threatening to destroy the world. In an effort to stop this, the 9 strongest warriors assembled to save the world. However, the world still headed towards extinction. Natsuko woke up from a dream to find herself in someone else's house. Luke, wearing an apron, came over with vegetables just as she woke up. He immediately bombarded her with questions. Before Natsuko could respond, her stomach growled. Luke then cooked for her, and while she was eating, he curiously brushed her hair aside, revealing her blushing face. She loudly praised his cooking, something not mentioned in the setting collection. Luke asked what a setting collection was, and Natsuko explained it recorded information about them, then recited Luke's data, which led him to call her a freak. Natsuko didn't mind, and even asked for another bowl, eating several bowls until she was full, and began answering Luke's questions. During a demonstration, Natsuko tried to use a ruler as a magical source, but nothing happened. Luke took the ruler, incredulous that it was a source of magic. Natsuko tried to snatch it back but accidentally fell on Luke. Junior walked in at that moment, thinking Natsuko was attacking Luke, and yelled at her, the person who saved his life. Natsuko grabbed him by the horn and swung him around. That's when Melanin and a small robot came in, saying the mayor was calling them. Natsuko examined the mayor closely, even daring to touch his muscles. Suddenly, she heard the voice of the prophetess's wife and shifted her attention. The wife laughed heartily, surprised to see such a lively girl in this world. The mayor asked where the kingdom of reality Natsuko spoke of was located. Natsuko wanted to know too, but told the locals that their world was part of an animated movie, and they were all characters drawn by animators. They were stunned and thought Natsuko was insane, but the wise old lady knew that things beyond human understanding often happen. Now, with only one soul future left, they must protect this last hope at all costs. The old lady suggested Natsuko join the hero squad, but both Junior and Luke opposed, with Luke awkwardly saying the squad didn't need girls. Of course, Melanin was different. She was a real warrior. Luke firmly disagreed with Natsuko joining. Natsuko declared she didn't care, especially since the Void would attack from the sky soon, making things difficult. Everyone caught the flaw in her statement. How could the Void fly? But since Natsuko had previously predicted accurately, Luke immediately asked her to clarify. However, the more he asked, the less Natsuko wanted to speak, and she ran out alone. Luke's words also upset Melanin. Natsuko returned to where she had fallen, pleading with the heavens to send her back to her original world, not wanting to hate her favorite movie because of these events. Despite her prayers, no miracle occurred, and it even started raining. Natsuko hid in a corner from the rain, feeling helpless and wishing she had watched more reincarnation-themed works. Seeing a passing carriage, she stowed away back to Luke's house. Luke and Junior, who were playing a game, thought a ghost had arrived. Despite their recent argument, Luke let Natsuko in and even gave her food, mainly to learn about the void attacking from the sky. Natsuko asked for drawing tools and sketched the mother of the void, which would spawn countless flying voids. Luke and others had never seen this type before. Natsuko also warned that these flying voids would arrive during the harvest festival in 3 days, causing a catastrophic destruction of crops and a subsequent food shortage, leading to many deaths. Luke pondered for a moment before asking why Natsuko had returned. She confessed she didn't know how to return to her original world, but had something to protect here: her meals. She wanted to eat well every day before returning. This reason convinced Luke, and everyone else believed Natsuko's words, starting preparations for the void's arrival. However, Luke set a condition. If the flying void really appeared in 3 days and Natsuko managed to repel it, only then would he acknowledge her as a member of the team. An exhausted Natsuko arrived at a small tavern, where to her surprise, the landlady already knew of her as a new member of the hero squad. She promptly served Natsuko a milk beer, which delighted her immensely. It was exactly the drink she had been craving. Natsuko downed it in one go, finding it even tastier than she imagined. Next came a fried pork cutlet, a hearty meal in preparation for the upcoming battle. However, as Natsuko looked more closely at the landlady, she found her strangely familiar. Her personality and even her name resembled that of her company president, who had once produced The Tale of Descent to Extinction. Natsuko wondered if the president knew she had become a background character in this world. Suddenly, she had a realization. If people from the real world were here, might there be a way or a clue to connect back to it? As she pondered whether she truly wanted to return to her real life, the 3rd day arrived. Everyone was busy harvesting crops, but the flying voids had already begun their assault. Fortunately, everyone was prepared. Luke instructed Melanin and Junior to defend the town and dragged Natsuko, who wanted to join them back to town, to use her summoning magic. As the mother of the voids released an endless stream, Natsuko struggled with summoning without hearing the voice she had before. As Luke faced the voids alone, the ruler finally spoke to Natsuko, urging her to draw, but only she could hear this voice. Under pressure, Natsuko tried to recreate the giant warrior from before, but the ruler informed her she couldn't draw the same thing again. With Luke battling countless voids alone and Natsuko's mind blank on what could combat aerial threats, the flying voids began moving towards the city. Melanin commanded everyone to shoot, and the mages, led by Junior, cast spells. Luke was nearly overwhelmed when Natsuko, finally inspired, summoned her drawing desk and frantically began to draw. Astonishingly, she drew anti-air missiles. Each missile hit its target precisely, turning the sky red with explosions. The missiles didn't spare the Mother Void either. Countless missiles raced to strike it, causing the massive Void Mother to explode dramatically. Natsuko had triumphed again, and just like before, fainted from the exertion. Luke tenderly picked her up, as now no one could doubt that Natsuko was their great hero. Just like last time, Natsuko slept for 3 days, mirroring the time she typically needed to complete 2 drawings, effectively draining her energy. In gratitude, Luke decided to cook her some delicious food himself. After once again saving the last town, Natsuko became one of the 9 warriors. The townspeople cheered her name as they were about to hold a harvest festival. Natsuko finally tied up her thick black hair and put on a beautiful gown, earning praise from a small unicorn. However, Natsuko was quick to argue with Junior again due to her sharp tongue. Originally, the movie plot involved the town nearly being destroyed by a flying void from the sky. To honor Junior and others who died using self-destruct magic, a joint funeral was held. But now, with Natsuko's intervention, the funeral turned into a celebration. The high priest led a ceremony to give thanks to the souls of the future, which everyone participated in. Melanin, however, showed no interest in this modern ritual that only became popular 200 years ago. After the ceremony, the celebration turned to singing and dancing. But Natsuko was more focused on eating until Luke reminded her to stay alert for the next battle. Junior consoled her, saying today was a day to be thankful and enjoy. They drank together, and Natsuko mentioned that the void would likely appear next on a rainy day. But the chance of rain today was 0, and it might not rain again until next month. At that moment, a group of young ladies gathered around Luke, the handsome and strong hero. Junior, seeing this, reverted to his original form, hoping to gain favor with the elf sisters. Unfortunately, they were there to see Melanin, a member of the holy choir who could soothe the souls of the dead with her singing. Everyone was busy with their own activities, leaving Natsuko to enjoy the festival alone. She took her food and beer up to the city wall and met an old fortune teller who wanted to know how she could see the future. Natsuko repeated her explanation that their world was actually a movie, which she had watched many times. The old woman didn't press further, but mentioned her ancient texts, which stated that if all souls were consumed by the void, a super void would appear, and the world would be destroyed. The 9 warriors would stop it and become the true light and saviors. The old woman wanted to know what future Natsuko had seen, but remembering Luke's fate in the later parts of the movie, she chose to remain silent. Understanding her, the old woman told her to enjoy the festival today and that they would talk another time. Just as the old woman left, Natsuko spotted Luke. Before she could greet him, he collided with a curvaceous young woman. The town's magnate was frantically searching for Destiny. In a rush, she hid under Luke's clothing. After people left, Luke also crawled under his robe, where Destiny tried to wipe his face, leading to a startle from both. Discovered by the magnate, Destiny had to hastily say goodbye to Luke. Natsuko witnessed this scene with mixed feelings, knowing Destiny was the movie's female lead and Luke's intended partner. Destiny, the mayor's naive and sheltered daughter, was supposed to meet Luke at the funeral, and they were supposed to fall in love at first sight. Despite the funeral turning into a celebration, they still met. However, Destiny decided to marry the magnate because he promised to build an orphanage in town. As she told her father this, Luke walked in, and the mayor introduced them. They hit it off immediately. When Natsuko and Junior arrived, Luke and Destiny had already formed a connection too deep for others to intrude. As the dance music started, they naturally became dance partners. Natsuko, who dreamt of Luke, was heartbroken. Junior saw through her and advised her not to interfere, explaining that Luke had been a warrior since birth, and his life had been nothing but battles. Destiny was the only one who could make him truly smile, so Natsuko would definitely not stand in the way of his happiness. Unnoticed, it had become night when 2 identical priests, one after the other, entered the town. Everyone was too drunk to notice anything amiss. Meanwhile, Natsuko was still eating voraciously. Destiny, having lost track of Luke, came to chat with Natsuko, who wasn't interested, and ended up throwing Junior's horn in frustration. Junior accused her of having no friends, which Destiny related to, remarking on their similarity. Just then, the town's magnate, who funded the last town and already had 8 wives, approached. He started critiquing Destiny's outfit, to whom he was engaged. Destiny, resigned to her fate, complied meekly. Natsuko confronted her, questioning why she would marry him. Destiny shared her dream of building an orphanage, prompting Natsuko to ask why she couldn't build it herself instead of relying on someone else. The magnate, displeased with Natsuko's interference, mistakenly thought she wanted to replace Destiny as his 9th wife. He dismissed Natsuko for not being attractive enough, which enraged her. She grabbed Junior and publicly declared her life philosophy. She would live as she wished, defining her own beauty. Suddenly, a small robot flew in, alarming everyone about a detected void reaction. Natsuko and others rushed outside and saw 2 identical priests, indicating one was an imposter from the void. This plot twist wasn't supposed to happen until later. Both priests insisted they were the real one, so Natsuko had them mimic her actions. Only the true priest could replicate them accurately, exposing the imposter. The mayor quickly ushered everyone to take shelter. Unfortunately, Luke was too drunk to fight. Junior blamed Destiny for giving Luke vodka. Natsuko lamented that all troubles stemmed from Destiny. As the void wreaked havoc, Destiny, the mayor's daughter, managed the shelter. She accidentally caught her dress in the door as the void charged them. A drunken Luke attempted to fight but was swiftly knocked aside by the void. At the critical moment, Natsuko's ruler reacted again, prompting her to think quickly and begin drawing furiously on her drafting table. Only the small robot could try to hold off the void as Natsuko drew. Just in time, her creation, a superhero with a cape, leaped from the paper and engaged in a fierce battle with the void. Natsuko narrated the scene as the superhero used Cat Punch and Mongolian Chop to overpower the void. Destiny and Junior cheered him on. Even Luke, despite his drunken state, burst out laughing as the superhero landed a final blow, eliminating the void. Exhausted, Natsuko then collapsed and slept for 3 days. Upon waking, Luke had prepared a feast in gratitude for Natsuko saving the town again. Natsuko was busy eating when Destiny, wearing a cat mask, entered. She had rejected the magnate's proposal and decided to build the orphanage herself, hoping for Natsuko's support. She now idolized Natsuko and the superhero. Melanin and Junior returned, explaining Melanin's absence during the void attack. She had been busy with the choir, although her expression suggested otherwise. The real culprit behind luring the monster to the town was her. On the day of the Harvest Festival, the void had been manipulated by transformation magic to appear as a priest to enter the town. This indicated that a magician from the town likely betrayed them. Luke asked Natsuko if she knew anything, just as Melanin passed by the window on her way to choir practice. Natsuko, clutching a drawing of Melanin she had just completed, sneaked off to follow her, knowing that Melanin was the instigator behind the previous incident. In the original story, the Super Void was born during the Harvest Festival, and Luke had to defeat it, only to find out that its real form was Melanin, transformed by magic. The movie did not reveal her motives, so Natsuko decided to follow Melanin to find out. Unexpectedly, Luke followed her, and she had to reveal the truth to him, that it was Melanin who had brought the void into the town. The two stealthily followed a few elves to the cemetery on the outskirts of the town, where there stood a massive statue of the town's last defending hero. Luke swiftly broke the protective barrier with his sword, revealing a passage filled with skeletons. At the edge of a cave, they were shocked by the sight of elves chanting a song full of hatred and terror, wishing for the world to end, with Melanin leading them. This scene was not in the movie. Melanin then spoke of feeding the future soul crystal to the void to birth the super void. A cultist suggested using a ritual, but Melanin said it wasn't time yet and considered other options. After the discussion, the cultists resumed their frenzy. Natsuko quickly pulled Luke away, fearing he would reveal himself and confront them. They kept this incident to themselves to avoid causing panic in town and dragged Junior, who happened to pass by, away with them. After getting Junior drunk, they discussed what to do next. Natsuko, knowing the original plot where Luke kills Melanin, insisted this must not happen and vowed to find another way. She knew much more than Luke from studying the setting collection, despite Luke's long acquaintance with Melanin. After a heated argument, they decided to use their own methods. Luke's approach was to make desserts for Melanin and gently ask if she had any complaints about the team, which she could express. However, Melanin refused to say anything, frustrating Natsuko, who overheard and confronted Melanin about when she started pushing for the creation of the Super Void, revealing that both she and Luke had seen everything. At this point, Melanin confessed. The elves, having lived through countless epochs and grown weary of endless wars and losses, hoped for the birth of the Super Void to end everything and bring about the world's demise. Only eternal destruction could bring happiness to the elves. Natsuko was speechless. Her beloved Melanin was not supposed to be like this. Melanin, who loved the 9 warriors, was now dismissing everyone's efforts for such a trivial reason. Melanin did not defend herself, but left them to decide her fate. Luke felt guilty for not knowing his teammates' suffering. That night, as Melanin met with the choir and heard townspeople optimistically discussing the upcoming era of peace, she must have felt a complex mix of emotions. Meanwhile, Luke devised a plan to save Melanin. Just as she planned to allow the Super Void to be born, Natsuko would use summoning magic to release the Super Void and command the elves to survive. Such a naive idea amused Natsuko, but since no one would die, they decided to try it as a last resort. The next day, they sneaked back to the cemetery, where Natsuko began to seriously draw the appearance of the Super Void. Although a villain, it was charming at the moment it was given life. Soon, Melanin and her group arrived. Natsuko worried that without the void attacking, her divine pen might not be able to summon it. Luke reassured her that they could try again tomorrow, as no one would die today, unaware that Natsuko had died suddenly in a previous life. The two sneaked into the cave, with Luke blending in among the followers. Once Natsuko released the Super Void using her summoning magic, Luke planned to step forward and guide everyone. Unexpectedly, Melanin decided to conduct that ritual today, causing her followers to go into a frenzy. Melanin's body levitated, and huge horns grew from her head, transforming her into the appearance of the Super Void. Natsuko was shocked, wondering how this twist in the plot had come about. Wasn't this supposed to mean Melanin would kill Luke? According to the original plot, however, it was Luke who was supposed to kill Melanin. As Natsuko hesitated, her magic pen urged her to continue drawing, but drawing the Super Void now was out of the question. She needed something that could touch Melanin's heart. In a stroke of inspiration, Natsuko drew a handsome, non-combative man. Surprisingly, during the ritual, Melanin had a change of heart and abruptly stopped the ceremony. Suddenly, a handsome man appeared on the throne, claiming to be a timeless entity, leading the elves in joyful singing and dancing. This instantly won over the hearts of all the cultists, especially Melanin, who joined the entity in song and dance, cleansing her dark thoughts. After the entity disappeared, Natsuko gave her drawing to Melanin, telling her that even if she died, this character would live on forever. Then Natsuko fainted. Finally, Melanin abandoned the idea of summoning the Super Void and returned with her companions. When Natsuko woke up, she was constantly asked by Melanin to draw more handsome men. It turned out the entity was indeed Natsuko's creation, a character from a boy band idol series she had worked on as an original artist. Seeing how much Melanin loved it, Natsuko felt reassured. Junior, understanding the whole story, also felt relieved. He had been worried about Luke and Natsuko spending so much time together, mistakenly thinking they were dating, not knowing a simple remark would enlighten Luke. In her previous life, Natsuko was a talented animator who handled nearly all aspects of movie production, insisting this was the most efficient method. In this movie world, she maintained the same belief. No matter how many voids attacked, she only needed to draw superheroes or powerful characters, eliminating the need for Luke and his team to even appear. During this time, the team's reputation grew, with Natsuko basking in the admiration and designing a signature team pose, heightening the excitement. However, Junior and others felt slighted, as recently it had all been about Natsuko enjoying her invincible status. On the other hand, Luke was becoming more dramatic, and their relationship was improving, much to Junior's dismay. He wasn't against Luke dating, but why did it have to be with Natsuko, whom he disliked? However, a small robot felt that Luke had become much happier since Natsuko's arrival. Luke's official partner in the original movie, Destiny, admired the masked Superman and had transformed her sexy figure into pure muscle, appreciating herself more thanks to Natsuko's advice. This time she wanted the team's help with a mission in a poor district where many orphan children survived through crime. Destiny hoped the team could help deliver food and promote her newly founded orphanage, Yabaneo House, as the children, distrusting adults, might listen to the 9 warriors, especially Junior, who was very popular among them. Junior had initially been reluctant, but upon hearing that Luke and Natsuko were paired up, he quickly intervened to break up their duo. Aware of the poor security in the slum, Luke had considered settling the residents once peace was achieved. Natsuko admired his mature approach, making him blush. Junior, not wanting to see them flirt, tried to distract Luke, but in a moment of inattention, a rabbit stole Natsuko's magic pen. Fortunately, Luke caught it in time. Recognizing him as the legendary hero, other children emerged, clearly admiring the 9 warriors. Luke distributed food while Natsuko used her drawing skills to persuade the children about a place where they could eat delicious meals every day. Yabuneo House. Even without working, they can still have meals. The slogan, combined with vivid cartoon images, indeed captured the children's attention. Moreover, Natsuko, now a member of the 9 warriors, was deeply trusted. It wasn't long before the children followed her to Yabaneo House, prompting even Junior to praise her impressively. Luke was astonished by the effectiveness of their efforts. After a busy day, the trio stopped a fight on their way back, only to discover that the victim was their former teammate, Justice. Justice, once fierce as a fire-breathing dragon on the battlefield, now reeked of alcohol and behaved frivolously in front of Natsuko, whom he had just met. Luke, already displeased with Justice's self-degradation, refused to speak to him and left with Junior and Natsuko. Natsuko knew why Justice had changed. Once admired by Luke, he was now guarding an illegal casino. During another trip to Yabuneo House with the children, Natsuko encountered Justice again, confessing she had always wanted to meet him. In a battle where the 8th future soul crystal was lost, Luke had led the rescue of those trapped in a collapsing town, resulting in a teammate's death, and Justice was severely injured. Fearing Luke would be distressed, Justice didn't tell anyone and left the team, choosing to degrade himself. Justice didn't admit this, instead flirtatiously pulling Natsuko close. Surprisingly, she took the opportunity to touch his wings, confirming they were indeed damaged and could no longer fly. Natsuko asked Justice why he chose to let Luke hate him instead of telling the truth. Justice preferred Luke to hate him rather than blame himself. Natsuko didn't say much more. Instead, she began to draw his portrait. Ironically, the fallen red dragon appeared quite attractive in his depravity, a comment overheard by Luke and Junior, who had come looking for Natsuko. Junior confidently assumed they were in an adult relationship, while Luke became increasingly suspicious of their interaction. Before he could confront Natsuko, the void attacked again. The warriors rushed to the battlefield facing a new type of void. Red eggs, which Natsuko had never seen before. Confident as ever, she quickly started drawing as soon as her magic pen urged her. She boasted she could handle it alone, just as in her previous life. This time she drew a samurai with a straw hat. However, after the samurai chopped the eggs, the fluid that leaked out seemed alive, surrounding them. The magic pen warned Natsuko that time was running out, and she needed to draw more quickly. Luke and the others rushed to protect her, but the continuous drawing left Natsuko exhausted, and the void's reactions grew stronger. Before she could finish drawing a new warrior, the samurai was impaled by spikes formed from the fluid. Natsuko, unable to complete her drawing, stood frozen as a tentacle with a gaping mouth, dove towards her. Natsuko and the others faced their biggest crisis yet with a newly emerged slime void. Even cutting it only dispersed the liquid, which could still transform back into a solid form to attack or defend. Despite Luke and the others' futile efforts to stop it, the slime void gradually advanced towards the future soul crystal, finally stopping and solidifying on the side of the high tower. Its surface then became incredibly hard, impervious to any attack. The small robot analyzed that this might be its cocoon stage, and once it emerged, it could become a complete void, capable of eroding the future soul crystal. After understanding this, Natsuko still planned to handle it alone, explaining that she didn't draw other things because she didn't know the voids could turn into liquid. However, an angry Luke intervened, questioning if she realized she could have died. After speaking, he left Natsuko alone to cool down and unexpectedly ran into Justice at a bar. Justice was aware of the tricky situation, and Luke subtly expressed his wish for Justice to rejoin the team. With the potential for aerial combat, they currently only had Junior capable of such feats. Without hesitation, Justice refused, mockingly consoling Luke that losing is part of war, which instantly infuriated Luke. He couldn't accept defeat because it would betray the comrades who died fighting. He declared himself a hero, unlike some cowardly lizard. Despite the taunts aimed at him, Justice laughed heartily, breaking the tension between them. After a long time not being confrontational, Justice inquired about Natsuko's condition. Luke admitted he valued Natsuko's abilities. If she had been there from the start, perhaps the future soul crystal wouldn't be threatened. But ever since she arrived, their battle plans had been a mess. He described her as careless and presumptuous, acting bizarrely and recklessly. Though it sounded like criticism, Justice detected Luke's concern for Natsuko. Luke almost asked if there was something more between Justice and Natsuko, but refrained and left cursing. Meanwhile, Natsuko went to a small tavern to think about what to draw next. The small robot approached her, questioning if she knew why she was unharmed despite being hit by the void. It showed her footage of Melanin and Junior healing her wounds, reminding her that she wasn't fighting alone, a sentiment Natsuko had often heard in her past lives. She finally conceded and returned, arrogantly asking about their battle plans. Melanin affirmed Natsuko's capabilities and recognized her reckless actions as a desperate defense of something. Memories of movies flashed through Natsuko's mind as Melanin reasoned emotionally, stressing that they couldn't defeat this void without united effort. Blushing, Natsuko agreed, and the gentle Melanin patted her head. Snapping back to reality, she promptly recorded this moment. Luke then realized that he had drawn Justice for the same reason. Natsuko mentioned she used to draw lots of Luke as a child, so she could draw any of his expressions by heart. Flustered by her teasing, Luke even mimicked the embarrassing gesture she had made. Later, the town guided its people to shelters, and the fortune-telling granny fortified the future soul crystal's defenses, though it was merely for psychological comfort. Meanwhile, Natsuko and the others reviewed the battle plans, replaying the footage of Natsuko being hit, discovering a hole-like weakness inside the void. Luke's plan involved him, Junior, and Natsuko waiting above, while the small robot lured the void with fragments of the future soul crystal to open its mouth. Melanin would use her magic to immobilize it, and then Luke and Junior would strike directly while Natsuko launched a full-scale summoning attack from above, aiming to eliminate the enemy within 3 seconds. By evening, the evacuation was complete, and the 9-member squad set out. Unable to sit idly, Justice went to see the warriors off. That night, something finally started to emerge from the giant cocoon. It was a huge centipede. Everyone immediately followed the battle plan, but the enemy's swift movements led to Junior and Melanin quickly losing ground. As the giant centipede spiraled upwards, Luke also rushed towards the mountaintop. Junior attempted to transform to catch up, but broke his horn and couldn't fly. Now, Luke was left alone to fight the giant centipede. At this crucial moment, the locator ruler in Natsuko's pocket lit up. She quickly transformed into a magical girl and started feverishly drawing at her desk. First, she drew a staircase to help Luke and Junior easily ascend the mountain. However, the centipede smashed part of the staircase with its tail, which Natsuko promptly repaired. Unable to see the battle above, she was at a disadvantage. Just then, Justice arrived. Natsuko asked him to carry her and the desk up to the battle. Despite having a broken wing, Justice managed to fly up. Luke noticed Justice's damaged wing just as Justice struggled and dropped down, but he quickly recovered. Natsuko continued drawing on his back. Luke, with no time to think further about the situation, focused on defeating the enemy to protect the future soul crystal. As the centipede began attacking the protective barrier, and with the barrier nearly shattered, the robot highlighted the centipede's neck flashing red, signaling them to attack there. At the moment the barrier broke, Junior kicked Luke's behind, sending him flying towards the target. Luke steadied himself in midair, and as planned, Melanin unleashed her control magic. She emerged from within the centipede and handed off to Luke, who then swung his sword with full force, successfully neutralizing the void. Everyone, including the future soul crystal, was safe. Natsuko fell asleep on Justice's back just as the sun rose. Luke came down and fist-bumped Justice, who then handed Natsuko to him, indicating that she was indeed the key to unlocking the hero's heart. Natsuko had always been a unique child. In elementary school, during a children's association event, they watched a movie titled The Story of Extinction. Afterward, Natsuko became somewhat different, often drawing characters from the movie and tearfully calling out Luke's name. She professed her love for the inexplicable nature of the film and vowed to become a master artist, practicing drawing Luke with her eyes closed. Her classmates found her odd, but one girl paid close attention to her. She watched as Natsuko immersed herself in the story, passionately pursuing her interests, and fell for this version of Natsuko, marking her first crush. Unfortunately, before elementary school ended, the girl had to transfer schools. Natsuko drew a picture of the girl and Luke from her mind, complete with a master's signature. The girl cried profusely while praising Natsuko's impressive talent. After entering junior high, Natsuko became even more obsessed with drawing. She would attract insects with cookies and sit calmly, sketching their movements. She arrived at school early every day to observe and draw other students, because the director of her favorite movie had mentioned doing the same in his youth. Her unique behavior caught the attention of a track team member, and she finally noticed him, primarily to study how his Adam's apple moved. Obligingly, the boy let her sketch this, and he felt a volcanic surge of emotions. After school, he ran to the track field, a scene that Natsuko witnessed. The next day, she asked him to run at a speed that left after images, which he did daily to impress her. Natsuko pushed him hard like the strictest coach, and in one moment, he also developed feelings for her. He even set a new record in the 100-meter dash at the county competition. However, when he was about to confess his feelings to her, Natsuko stated she would no longer come to watch him run, and even got his name wrong. She was satisfied with the running motion she had captured and moved on to her next project. Thus, the boy's first love abruptly ended. Later, in high school, Natsuko joined an animation club at a university. The club president, dreaming of becoming a leading young director in animation, decided to create a short film for the school festival. Due to a lack of staff, the project was chaotic until Natsuko joined. The president, noticing a loot keychain on Natsuko's bag, praised her taste since The Story of Extinction was also his favorite film. Natsuko then showcased her exceptional skills from her second-year portfolio, quickly grasping the president's guidance. She drew both the original illustrations and animations at a remarkable pace, rendering the president's storyboard irrelevant. He had no choice but to leave the entire project in her hands. During a break, when asked about her future plans, Natsuko revealed she intended to work directly in an animation studio instead of attending college to become a master, as she didn't have time for university. Natsuko's directorial debut was a sensation, leaving the president enamored with the talent that could make others feel inferior. His admiration turned into a crush, and the short film was a great success at the festival, inspiring him to change his dream. If Natsuko was to become a master, he would become a grand master. He kept a close watch on Natsuko's career, which rapidly advanced to her debut as a TV series director. Her work became a cultural phenomenon and was hailed as a breakthrough by major magazines. Meanwhile, the president remained relatively unknown, but was undeterred, convinced that once he entered the animation industry, he would quickly surpass Natsuko. Despite teasing from other club members to graduate first, the president, still in university in his 8th year due to his lingering feelings from his first love, remained hopeful. By this time, Natsuko had joined an animation studio. The company's president looked at her with fondness, as everything Natsuko drew turned into money. The president said this was possibly her 108th, and maybe her last first love. This was the first time she had felt this way since watching The Story of Extinction. Therefore, she entrusted Natsuko with full responsibility for an original feature film titled First Love. Although there was already a story outline, she allowed Natsuko to make any changes she wanted. Following this, Natsuko began her hellish research on first love. Having never experienced first love herself, she didn't really understand it and resorted to pestering others. She would stop high school girls in alleys late at night, asking them to show her what first love was like, which frightened them into calling the police. Not only that, she harassed her colleagues, reenacting manga scenes by bumping into male colleagues to ask if they felt a spark, and pressing female colleagues for stories of their first loves. However, the president just asked everyone to be understanding and to collide with Natsuko's efforts. But before any sparks could fly, Natsuko died from eating an expired bento and found herself transported into the world of movies. Just before her death, she heard the president shouting, "Your first love hasn't even started yet." Awoken from her memories, Natsuko found herself at a dining table. Junior was asking her to give back his horn, but she was focused on eating. The children were all around Justice, creating a lively, joyful scene at the table. However, Natsuko suddenly remembered, wondering if that movie could have such a happy ending. But it didn't matter. She would take things one step at a time. Yet, the next second, a bird landed behind her and said, "How could that possibly be?" Natsuko was enjoying a meal with everyone when suddenly a bird flew by and started saying discouraging things. After that, the bird began following her around every day, constantly murmuring, "Useless, useless." Natsuko felt that the bird seemed oddly familiar. Then, a small robot approached her and explained that the bird might share the same origin as her. Most of the people in this town were refugees from 9 different countries, but the bird didn't belong to any of them. It was likely from the same realm of reality as Natsuko. The bird wasn't just bothering Natsuko, it also liked pestering Destiny. So, Natsuko asked Destiny for help in catching it, and called Justice over, planning to make bird soup. However, upon seeing Destiny's current appearance, the bird was furious. It lamented how Destiny, once a fragile and pitiful girl, had now turned into a muscular figure, completely unrecognizable. Disgusted, the bird grabbed Natsuko's brush and sketched how Destiny used to look. To Natsuko's surprise, the signature on the drawing was the director's autograph. It turned out that the bird was the director who had died from food poisoning, Natsuko's idol. Overjoyed, she showed the drawing to the director and asked him to add a personal message for her. The director, now in his bird form, had gained wings, while Natsuko had acquired a positioning ruler. Clearly, both had been reincarnated into another world. The director warned Natsuko not to meddle with his film anymore, saying it wouldn't make a difference even if she tried. Natsuko was baffled. How could she possibly alter such a masterpiece? That film was her Bible. But the director didn't believe her. Ever since Natsuko arrived in this world, the film's total runtime had increased. He had already cried while cutting out countless scenes. No matter how much Natsuko protested, the director insisted that the story's ending was already determined, and Luke's demise was inevitable. After delivering this warning, the bird flew away. Meanwhile, Luke was brooding over his feelings for Natsuko. He invited Junior to the tavern for a drink. Luke confided that a friend of a friend seemed to have fallen for someone and admitted it was his first time experiencing such emotions. He had no idea what to do. Junior immediately realized that the friend of a friend was Luke himself. He asked how far things had progressed and was relieved to hear they weren't dating yet. But then Luke said he was planning to marry her, which Junior vehemently opposed. The tavern owner stepped in, advising Luke that proposing out of the blue would only disgust the other person. He reminded Luke to confess his feelings first. Enlightened, Luke left Junior behind and rushed to find Natsuko. At that moment, Natsuko was pondering the director's words. In the movie, Luke's companions all died one by one, and he too met his end. But now, none of them had died yet. Surely Luke wouldn't turn out that way, right? Just as she was deep in thought, Luke appeared, blushing, and confessed that he was captivated by her. Then, he promptly left, leaving Natsuko stunned. What just happened? A character from her childhood anime had just confessed to her. But wait, this was the real living Luke, not some untouchable 2D character anymore. Unable to process it, Natsuko decided not to think about it. The next day, she acted as if nothing had happened and continued eating the meals Luke prepared. But Luke refused to let things slide. Every time he saw Natsuko, he confessed to her again, and every time she pretended not to hear him. Frustrated, Luke began to spiral into self-doubt and sought advice from his deceased companions. Unexpectedly, he ran into Justice. Who would have thought that their brave hero would be troubled by love? Justice, acting as a supportive older brother, listened to Luke's woes. But when he heard that Luke confessed every single time they met, Justice broke into a cold sweat. No doubt about it, you've definitely been disliked by Natsuko. But don't worry too much. At times like this, you should invite Natsuko on a date. Take her to places you don't usually go, like a nice restaurant or somewhere romantic with a beautiful night view. Of course, the best choice would be a place Natsuko herself wants to visit. Luckily, Justice knew of such a spot. Luke immediately went to invite Natsuko to the hot springs. As expected, Natsuko couldn't refuse. The two arrived at a desert oasis outside the city, where a stunning hot spring awaited them. Natsuko couldn't wait to undress, but suddenly remembered Luke was there. Luke, being considerate, went to the other side. Both ended up entering the hot spring completely naked. Luke accidentally caught a glimpse of Natsuko's body, and for once, she actually blushed. As they soaked, they casually chatted. Natsuko talked about her experiences in the real world, her favorite movie, and other topics Luke didn't quite understand. Suddenly, she asked who Luke thought was the most popular among the 9 warriors. Luke confidently thought it was himself, but it turned out to be Junior. His image was more appealing to kids. What Luke really wanted to know was who Natsuko liked. In this situation, there was no way Natsuko could utter Luke's name. Seeing this, Luke thoughtfully didn't press further, and instead remarked how much he'd like to see the country Natsuko came from someday. As he stood up from the water, his back scars were revealed. Those scars reminded Natsuko again that Luke wasn't just a character drawn with a pencil. For him, this was the real world. Realizing this made Natsuko's heart flutter. But then Luke suddenly walked toward her, noticing something alarming. Void creatures had appeared and were heading for the town. Without hesitation, Luke grabbed his sword and charged after them. Natsuko followed closely behind. The Void launched a long-range attack, its beam resembling something she had drawn before. Although neither was seriously hurt, the hot spring was destroyed. This void was unlike any they had encountered before. Luke pulled Natsuko behind a rock and muttered some dramatic lines before charging forward again with his sword. Natsuko's ruler urged her to draw something quickly. Seeing Luke struggling, she worked at lightning speed to sketch a mech warrior. The mech fought the void's beams, but was overpowered and could only use its shield to hold them off. Luke, however, noticed a pattern in the void's attacks. It paused briefly before firing a massive beam. Using this moment, he brought Natsuko onto the mech warrior. Following its movements, Luke delivered a fatal blow to the void himself. He even managed to confess his feelings mid-battle. Natsuko couldn't take her eyes off him. Before meeting Natsuko, Luke was just a hero burdened by his mission. He and his companions had fought tirelessly, losing one future soul crystal after another, and losing comrades one by one. Of the 9 warriors, only 4 remained, and they had just one future soul crystal left. Even so, ordinary people still complained about him, saying he was an incompetent hero who hadn't freed them from the void's threat. Hearing such words hurt Luke deeply. He didn't even know why he was fighting anymore. It was during that bleak time that Natsuko suddenly appeared. The creatures she summoned, which didn't belong to this world, helped them solve problem after problem. While Luke felt relieved, he couldn't help but be drawn to her. However, every time Natsuko used her summoning magic, she would fall into a 3-day slumber. All Luke could do was prepare her a hearty meal for when she woke up, and Natsuko brought more into Luke's life. She made him laugh freely, something he hadn't done in a long time. She made him stop questioning why he was fighting, but she always acted carefree, as if nothing mattered. Sometimes this made Luke angry, though even then, he still cooked whatever she wanted to eat. He even recreated soba noodles for her. Gradually, he began to lose track of what this unfamiliar feeling in his heart was. He only knew that whenever he was with Natsuko, he couldn't help but pay attention to her. If he saw her being close to someone else, he would feel dejected. He'd go back and practice sword swings furiously. Afterward, seeing the basil in the garden growing well, he'd think about baking Natsuko a basil pie the next day. Then he'd realize he was thinking about her again, unable to stop himself. No matter what he did, her image filled his mind. Finally, Luke understood what this indescribable feeling was. It was love. Love for Natsuko. So without hesitation, he ran to confess. After annoying Natsuko to no end, he sought advice from Justice. After all, this was his first love. Since Natsuko's arrival, his world had changed. Now, he fought for Natsuko. For Natsuko, he vowed to destroy the void. As he spoke, his sword cleaved through the void's body. As the dawn broke, he held Natsuko in his arms, watching the sun rise. This was his first love, and Natsuko found herself increasingly unable to ignore Luke's presence. A single accidental glance into his eyes would leave her blushing, but Luke would block her path and ask for another date. That's when Melanin and the others stumbled upon them. Melanin couldn't help but sigh. Ah, to be young. Junior, on the other hand, rushed over to stop them. Meanwhile, Natsuko accidentally locked eyes with the director outside the window. Her mood plummeted, and she hid her face with her hair. The small robot noticed and followed her inside. He asked her about Luke's fate. Natsuko stayed silent. The robot said he was good at forecasting the weather, so if she was worried about the future, maybe he could help. For once, this softened Natsuko's heart. She told the robot that, if the movie's original plot played out, Junior would die during a massive void army attack. A grieving Luke would meet Destiny, who would slowly heal his emotional scars, but Destiny would end up engaged to the chairman to protect the children. Luke would eventually kill Melanin, who transformed into an overvoid. Afterward, Luke, the murderer of the 9 warriors, and Destiny, the deceiver of the legendary hero, would be condemned by the townspeople and forced into a corner. At that point, the Void Army would attack again. Destiny would die protecting a child, leaving behind the words, "Please protect the last soul crystal." But standing in the ruins of the town, with no one left beside him, Luke would lose all hope. His companions and his love all gone, he would destroy the last soul crystal himself, becoming an overvoid and ushering in the end of the world. If what the director said was true and the ending was already set, then this was their fate. The robot comforted Natsuko, saying that was only the future of a world without her. Since her arrival, Luke had already changed. He believed Natsuko could rewrite the future. Then he asked her about his own fate in that world. To Natsuko's surprise, the robot had been the last surviving member of the 9 warriors, though the world still met its end. At that moment, the robot detected void activity. Everyone rushed to investigate. It was the insect mother void they had encountered before, but this time it had long-range bombardment abilities. Even worse, the void's attacks resembled things Natsuko had drawn before. It had plagiarized her drawings. The warriors split up. Junior created a barrier to protect the town. Melanin provided long-range support. Luke fought in close combat, but he was no match for the 2 void warriors. Natsuko quickly pulled out her ruler and began drawing a fighter jet. Meanwhile, Luke, knocked to the ground, was being cornered by the void warriors. But Natsuko's drawing wasn't finished. Junior stepped in front of Luke and began chanting the self-destruct magic spell again. Were they really heading toward the original movie's ending? Natsuko frantically kept drawing, failing for the first time to succeed in one go. Unexpectedly, even her discarded sketches materialized into reality. A chaotic mass of black lines flew into the sky and was blown apart by a bomb. Natsuko's mind raced with thoughts of creating something no one could ever imitate. But the director's words echoed in her ears. Even if you try to rewrite this film, it's useless. Her hand froze. Luke continued to fight desperately. Seeing Natsuko frozen in place, the robot grew both anxious and exasperated. A bomb suddenly destroyed her drawing table. The robot urged Natsuko to draw something greater than a happy ending. He believed she could change the future. With those words, the robot flew toward the insect mother. Before it could even get close, it was nearly torn apart. Using all its remaining energy, the robot self-destructed, taking the insect mother down with it. Looking at the devastation before her, Natsuko cried, blaming herself for everything. After the battle ended, the priest led everyone in mourning the small robot and the townspeople who had sacrificed their lives. Their last remaining town had suffered severe damage. Now more than ever, everyone needed to unite and prevent the birth of the Overvoid. However, a rumor began to spread among the townsfolk. They noticed that the recent voids looked identical to the creatures Natsuko had summoned before. Combined with Natsuko's claim of being from the realm of reality, people began to suspect that she was colluding with the voids. Meanwhile, the 9 warriors, now without the small robot, could no longer predict when the voids would appear. The town walls couldn't be repaired in time, so they had to take shifts standing guard. They had also lost a powerful ally in Natsuko, who couldn't draw anything anymore. Natsuko isolated herself in her room, filled with regret and blaming herself for her incompetence. Luke came in to bring her food. With supplies running low, it was just vegetable porridge, but the vegetables had been grown by the small robot. This only deepened Natsuko's guilt. The aftermath of the battle brought even more problems. The farmland was destroyed by the voids, and many homes lay in ruins. Despair spread among the townsfolk. Luke could only keep promising everyone that he would protect them. He barely ate or rested during this time. Junior was deeply worried but couldn't get through to him. One night, Junior went to cry at the graves of their fallen comrades, where Justice unexpectedly joined him. But unlike Luke, Justice was more concerned about Junior. He said it was rare for someone to lose companions and still act like everything was fine, especially since Junior had been so close to the small robot. Junior, overcome with memories, broke down in tears. He blamed himself for the small robot's death. If he had succeeded in using the self-destruct spell earlier, the robot wouldn't have had to sacrifice itself. Junior called himself a useless coward and wept bitterly, shouting the small robot's name. After crying, he begged Justice to find a way to help Luke. But Justice knew that it wasn't him who could help Luke. It was Natsuko. Luke had changed so much since Natsuko's arrival. He could laugh freely with everyone. Even Junior had to admit this. At the same time, the rumors about Natsuko grew worse. Some villagers even blamed her for the small robot's death, worrying that the next victim might be the hero. They pointed out that voids had appeared more frequently since Natsuko's arrival. Now, anything Natsuko had drawn could turn into a void, making her even more suspicious. Meanwhile, another faction in the town began spreading void worship. 2 opposing groups emerged in secret. One that accused Natsuko of being a traitor planning to summon the Overvoid, calling for her execution, and another that revered her as a goddess. Natsuko was completely unaware of this. She finally shared everything she knew with the prophetic old woman. She had intended to tell Luke as well, but doubted he would believe her. She feared he would only blame himself further and eventually take his own life. The old woman, however, understood what Natsuko was saying. She explained that no matter what they did, they couldn't stop the world's end. The ancient texts about the 9 warriors being able to save the world were merely a glimmer of hope given to the dying. Rather than living in fear and uncertainty before the end, it was better to hold on to that hope and keep going. That was the true purpose of the 9 warriors. In the end, the hero Luke would become the Overvoid, and the world would be destroyed. No matter what Natsuko did, it would all be in vain. But Natsuko refused to believe this. She began searching for the director, even going to Destiny for answers. Instead of finding the director, she learned that Destiny had gotten engaged to the chairman for the sake of the orphanage. It felt like the world was returning to its original course. Only now, the small robot's funeral had replaced Junior's. Would Melanin be next? Melanin, after all, wanted the Overvoid to be born. Luke would kill Melanin in the end. But before that could happen, Natsuko herself had already become the target of the maddened townsfolk. Meanwhile, Melanin led 2 elves into the tower where the future soul crystal was kept. Luke and Junior, walking through the streets, encountered armed townsfolk. They also saw posters distributed by the Void worshippers. The posters claimed that Natsuko, sent from the realm of reality, was the savior of their world. Praise Lady Natsuko. The crazed townsfolk had decided that Natsuko was the leader of the Void cult. Luke didn't quite understand what was happening. He only felt the atmosphere growing increasingly strange. Why was everyone shouting for him to go defeat Natsuko? Worried, Luke immediately ran to find Natsuko. The town was already in chaos. Some townsfolk had broken into Natsuko's room and found one of her old drawings. They used it as evidence of her collusion with the Voids, claiming she wanted the Overvoid to be born. When word spread that evidence had been found, the mob grew even more frenzied. Luke couldn't find Natsuko in her house, so he told Junior to split up and search. They had to find her before the mob did. Meanwhile, Natsuko was completely confused. She had been surrounded by the Void cultists, who were demanding that she summon the Overvoid. Yet, she couldn't spot Melanin among the cultists. Soon the townsfolk arrived as well. The cultists immediately shielded Natsuko, and the 2 groups clashed violently. Natsuko stood there unsure of what to do. Ever since she arrived in this world, things had only gotten worse. At that moment, the Void army struck again. This time it was made up of chaotic, scribble-like voids. Fortunately, Luke arrived just in time to protect Natsuko. But instead of focusing on the enemy, the townsfolk tried to use the chaos to harm Natsuko. The cultists, in turn, worked to protect her. The scene descended into utter chaos, resembling a scene straight out of the movie. Luke grabbed Natsuko's hand and ran, just like he had done with Destiny in the film. But suddenly, a void appeared in front of them. Luke went to help a nearby townsfolk fight off the void, telling Natsuko to run ahead. Natsuko clutched her positioning ruler, frozen in indecision. Everything she drew turned into voids. How could she fight like this? Meanwhile, Melanin was preparing to use forbidden magic. The Void army had already breached the town. Natsuko felt she had to draw something. Anything. But she couldn't draw a single thing. All she could do was watch as Luke got injured. At that moment, the crazed townsfolk caught up to her. They hurled weapons at Natsuko. Injured and barely conscious, Natsuko staggered. Seeing this, Luke immediately stepped in to shield her. Just then, a child was knocked down by a void nearby. Without thinking, Natsuko rushed to save the child. The child quickly ran to safety, but Natsuko was left exposed to the void. The void opened its massive maw, ready to swallow her whole. Junior saw this and rushed to pull her back. But in the end, both Natsuko and Junior were sucked into the void. The townsfolk threw all their weapons at the void. Eventually, the void disappeared, and the crowd erupted in cheers. All that remained was a blood-stained positioning ruler and Luke's face, etched with despair.